A black man walks into the police station without anyone knowing he is the new police chief. Insult, contempt, and then, a hateful punch from an arrogant officer. But he didn't know, he just punched away his own career. When the truth is revealed, everyone is stunned. And the real question becomes, what is the price to pay for this arrogance? Please continue to follow this story. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next powerful stories. Brookhaven is a mid-sized city in the American South, where racial discrimination in policing still hides beneath the surface. Even though people have fought for justice for years, the police force is still shaped by outdated thinking, quiet racism and unfair treatment. White officers tend to get promoted faster. Officers of color, no matter how capable, are often pushed aside. Their efforts ignored. Their careers stalled. Before Marcus Thompson was appointed, the Brookhaven Police Department was an old-school system, mostly led by older white men. Bias in law enforcement was everywhere. Derogatory remarks about black people, and even cases of police brutality, were covered up with excuses. Despite community complaints, change was slow. The people in power didn't want to lose their privilege. The city's decision to appoint a black man as the new police chief shocked many inside the department. Even though the mayor and city council strongly supported it, there were whispers and quiet resistance from within. Marcus Thompson, 45, had 20 years of experience. He had worked across departments, often in areas filled with complex crime. He was known for being sharp, disciplined, and fair. From patrol officer to leadership, he had climbed the ranks based on real ability, not politics. But it hadn't been easy. He had faced resistance all his career because of his race. Marcus was of average height with a solid build, clean-cut beard, short hair, and focused eyes. He wasn't someone who backed down. Years in the force had made him wise, calm under pressure, and strategic. He knew that real change in a system like this wouldn't come from emotion. It would come from focus and power. As a black man, he had seen injustice, not just in how people were treated on the streets but also how black officers were treated inside the force. He knew if he was going to fix anything from the inside he had to stay sharp and strong. That morning Marcus walked into the Brookhaven Police Department, the very place he now led. But he didn't walk in like a boss. He didn't wear the badge. He didn't even dress like an officer. He wore dark jeans, a clean shirt, and a casual blazer. No name tag. No signs of authority. What? He wanted to see how the officers treated a regular black man who walked in off the street. No title. No power. Just skin. As Marcus stepped through the glass doors, he immediately felt it, the cold, tense energy of an old system. A few officers stood around the reception desk, laughing casually. In the corner of the room, a middle-aged black man sat alone, looking nervous. Marcus didn't rush to the front desk. He paused. Observed. A white officer stood by the desk, sipping coffee while chatting with another cop. When he noticed the black man waiting, he leaned in and muttered, "Another one with drama. Let's see what he's whining about this time." The other cop laughed but said nothing. Marcus heard it all. It wasn't new, but it still hit hard. He approached the desk. Behind it sat a young officer, eyes glued to his phone, ignoring everyone around him. The black man had been sitting there for over 15 minutes, and no one had said a word to him. Marcus cleared his throat gently. The young officer looked up, scanned Marcus from head to toe, then gave a weak, uninterested smile. "What do you need?" he asked, his tone sharp. Marcus looked him in the eye. There was no welcome in that voice. No professionalism. Just apathy, and maybe a hint of judgment. "I'm here to see HR," Marcus replied calmly. The officer glanced again, didn't answer, and turned back to his phone. No direction. No help. Just silence. Marcus didn't say a word. He locked the young man's face in memory. So this was how it began. He stood there, still and quiet, watching the officer scroll. The man in the waiting chair was still being ignored. His leg tapped the floor anxiously, but he said nothing. Just as Marcus prepared to walk in by himself, a loud voice rang from behind. "What's going on here?" Marcus turned. A tall, broad man in his mid-40s stood in uniform. His name tag read Lieutenant Dean Wallace. Wallace had light brown hair, a square face, and cold blue eyes. He looked Marcus up and down, arms crossed, face tight with irritation. He didn't say hello. Didn't smile. Just stared. "What are you doing here?" Wallace asked, voice dry as sand. Marcus didn't flinch. This wasn't new to him. "I need to see HR to complete some paperwork," he said, steady and polite. Wallace's brows lifted. His voice gained an edge of sarcasm. "Procedures? You sure you're even in the right place?" Marcus held his gaze. This is the Brookhaven Police Department, right? Wallace smirked. I don't think HR deals with your kind of case. There it was. Your kind. A quiet dig at his skin. Maybe even at his gender. Marcus didn't react, not yet. I still need to see HR, he repeated. Wallace turned to the young receptionist. You hear that? The young officer shrugged. He wants to see HR. Wallace chuckled, then turned back to Marcus with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Look man, I don't know if you're here to complain, apply for something, or just wander in, but we don't deal with random stuff. Try city support. Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but his voice stayed even. I have the right to be helped. Just like anyone else. Wallace sneered. Let me guess, you watched something on Netflix and thought you could stroll in here demanding your rights? A few nearby officers laughed. Others just kept their heads down, pretending not to notice. No one stepped in. I just want to complete some paperwork, Marcus said again. Wallace shook his head with fake sympathy. Listen, if you need food stamps or whatever, you're at the wrong window. Marcus replied, voice like steel. I'm talking about police administrative work. Not social welfare. Wallace's face twisted. Oh, I get it. You're one of those people sent to keep tabs on us, right? Some new human rights watchdog. He looked at the room, raised his voice. Hey guys, anyone want to help this activist monitor the station today? More laughter. Some younger officers looked away, uncomfortable. Others kept watching Marcus, curious. Marcus stayed calm. I want to speak with the head of HR. Wallace tilted his head. For what? Because I have a right to. Wallace sneered again. You love that word, right? But around here, no one has to do anything just because you say so. The room laughed louder. Marcus didn't blink. But inside he knew what this was. Wallace wasn't just a bad apple. He was the one rotting the whole basket. And Marcus had seen enough. Marcus didn't want to waste more time. He looked Wallace straight in the eye and said louder this time. I want to see the HR captain. If you can't help me, then call someone who can. Wallace paused. He didn't like the tone. Marcus was calm but firm. And that made Wallace feel challenged. Oh, are you giving me orders now? No, Marcus replied. I'm requesting a service that every citizen is entitled to. Wallace's jaw tensed. He didn't like any of it, not the words, not the confidence, and especially not that a black man dared to stand his ground. I think you should leave, Wallace said. Before something happens. Marcus crossed his arms. Are you threatening me? Wallace stepped forward, closing the gap between them. I'm warning you. The room changed. The atmosphere grew thick. The other officers stopped laughing. Some stood straighter. A few looked at each other nervously. They could feel it, something wasn't right. I'm not leaving, Marcus said calmly. Not until I see the person I came to see. Wallace inhaled sharply, his face tightening. Fine. You want to meet someone? He growled. I'll help you meet someone you won't like. He turned and barked to another officer nearby. Take him out. The younger officer hesitated. But, Lieutenant, I said get him out. Now. The officer looked uneasy but stepped forward. Marcus didn't move. Wallace's glare intensified. All eyes were now on him and Marcus. Even the ones who had laughed earlier now stood quiet. Wallace was furious. He hadn't expected Marcus to hold his ground. You're going out, Wallace snapped. Or I'll make sure you regret it. Marcus didn't flinch. His voice was steady. I told you, I'm not leaving until I speak to the person I came for. Wallace's face turned red. He didn't understand why this man wouldn't back down. In his experience, black men didn't challenge authority in police stations. Not like this. The room stayed silent. Officers glanced at each other. Some were beginning to wonder if Wallace had gone too far. But Wallace didn't care. To him this wasn't about rules anymore. It was about pride. And Marcus wasn't budging. That made Wallace snap. He lunged forward and grabbed Marcus's arm, squeezing it hard. I warned you. Now get out. He yanked Marcus toward the door, using force to shove him. Marcus felt the grip, strong and rough. But he wasn't afraid. He couldn't let Wallace take control. In one swift motion, Marcus pulled his arm back, breaking the grip. Wallace wasn't expecting that. A black man fighting back? In his station. Wallace stepped back, his eyes wide with surprise, but only for a moment. Then his face darkened. The room held its breath. Some officers chuckled nervously, thinking Marcus was just putting up a silly fight. But others began to realize this was going too far. Marcus stood firm. feet planted, eyes locked. "I advise you not to do this," he warned. Wallace's nostrils flared. He felt humiliated and challenged. This wasn't about some unknown guy anymore. This was personal. And in front of everyone he couldn't back down. His fists clenched. His ego boiled over. Without thinking, he threw a punch. Pop. His fist hit Marcus's face. Art. The blow knocked Marcus backward. His heel caught the edge of a nearby table and he crashed to the ground. The entire room froze. Then, laughter. "Nice shot," someone called out. "Maybe next time he'll shut up." To some of them this was just another day. Just another black man being silenced. But not everyone laughed. Some officers' faces shifted. The young ones looked disturbed. A few looked at the floor. In the back, a female admin assistant gasped and covered her mouth. She hadn't expected Wallace to go that far. Another employee took a step back, reached for his phone, and hesitated. Should he call someone? Still, no one stepped in. Not yet. Marcus didn't cry, didn't groan, didn't even yell. He felt the sting of pain across his cheek and down his jaw, but he didn't show it. Instead he pushed himself up. Slow, steady, silent. Wallace watched him, stunned. He had hit Marcus with full force. But Marcus was getting up. Marcus adjusted his shirt, took a breath, lifted his head. "No tears. No right." Just a cold, focused calm. Then, a door opened at the back of the station. Out walked a middle-aged man with graying hair, holding a folder of papers. He paused, eyes scanning the room, then froze when he saw Marcus. His face went pale. He dropped the papers and shouted, "That's the new chief. What the hell did you just do?" The room froze. The sound of that one sentence, "That's the new chief," hit harder than any siren ever could. For a moment everything stopped. The admin officer who had just walked out stood frozen, mouth slightly open, eyes darting between Marcus and Wallace. Dean Wallace blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. "No," he stammered, barely able to form the words. "No way." He turned to look at Marcus. His face, once full of contempt and pride, was now filled with raw fear. All the arrogance disappeared. His jaw hung open. He couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. It can't be," he whispered. Marcus didn't move. Didn't say a word. He just watched him. Silent. Calm. Deadly calm. Wallace's hands twitched. He stepped back once. Then again. The color drained from his face. Around the room, officers who had laughed only minutes ago now looked at each other in pure horror. One young officer whispered, "Wait, that was the sheriff?" No one answered. Because everyone knew the truth. They had all just mocked and watched the assault of their new boss. Just then a woman from Human Resources, Dana Wells, ran over. She looked panicked. She rushed to the manager who had shouted, grabbed the folder from his hand and began flipping through the files. Then she froze. Her eyes darted from the paper to Marcus. She looked up. "It's true," she said aloud, her voice shaking. "This is Marcus Thompson, the new chief of police. Just appointed." You could feel it, the oxygen being sucked out of the room. Every officer who had laughed suddenly stood like a statue. A few backed up. One man removed his cap. Dana took a step back, her hand over her chest. She looked at Wallace, who still stood frozen, lips trembling. Marcus took a breath. Then he took a step forward. All eyes followed him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't scream. He didn't need to. He said one thing. "Arrest Lieutenant Dean Wallace." Immediately. The room exploded. Wallace stepped back. "What?" He looked around. "Wait, no. This is a misunderstanding." He threw up his hands. "I didn't know who you were. If I did, I would never." But it was too late. No one moved to help him. He had just dug his own grave. Marcus stared at him. "You're right," he said coldly. "You didn't know who I was. But that doesn't change what you just did." He paused. "And sadly, you just assaulted your superior officer." His voice sharpened. "Handcuff him." 2 officers stepped forward. They hesitated, looked at each other, then moved in. Wallace flinched. "No, no, no, no. This is wrong." The cold sound of metal cuffs locking around his wrists echoed through the silent room. Click, click. "What the hell are you doing?" Wallace yelled, trying to pull away. He looked around at the faces in the room, the same ones who had laughed with him, joked with him. None of them would meet his eyes. He yelled again. "Help me. Somebody. You know this isn't right." No one moved. The officers who had laughed along now stared at the floor. The ones who stood by silently now looked ashamed. Wallace panicked. You can't do this to me. I'm a lieutenant. Marcus didn't even blink. You have the right to remain silent, he said flatly. And you'll explain yourself in court. Wallace thrashed. This is political. It's a setup. I've done nothing wrong. But his voice cracked. He was desperate. Because deep down he knew. He was done. 2 officers dragged him away. Out of the station. Through the hall. Down the stairs. The door slammed behind him. Silence returned. But it wasn't calm. It was cold. Uncomfortable. Marcus stood there. He looked around the room. All the officers, the ones who mocked him, ignored him, dismissed him, now stood stiff, avoiding his eyes. Marcus finally spoke. I don't need to explain anything to you. You already know how serious this is. His voice didn't need volume. Each word hit like a hammer. A young officer whispered under his breath, We're gonna get suspended. No one answered. Because they all knew. Yes, they were. Just 1 hour later, the police station was a whirlwind. Brookhaven's senior officials called an emergency meeting. In the center of the long table sat a case file, thick, ugly, and damning. It was Dean Wallace's personnel file. Inside, records, complaints, warnings, proof that this wasn't the first time. A senior officer flipped through the pages, frowning. Lieutenant Wallace has a long history of misconduct, he said. Verbal abuse, racial slurs, use of force complaints. None of it ever properly dealt with. Another official leaned forward, shaking his head. This is unacceptable. We can't allow this man to stay in the force. Not after today. No one disagreed. There was no need for a debate. The evidence was too strong. The video footage, taken by the admin assistant and the silent witnesses in the room, had already been submitted. The verdict was swift. Dean Wallace was fired. On the spot. But it didn't end there. The officers who had supported him, encouraged him, and laughed with him, they were suspended. Several were placed under review. And the ones who stood by and did nothing? They were warned harshly. Brookhaven police had just been hit with a wave of accountability it hadn't seen in decades. A real earthquake had shaken the system. That same night, the video of the assault leaked online. It spread like wildfire. News outlets picked it up. Social justice activists hit the streets. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, they all lit up. The video showed everything. A black man, calm, composed, being insulted, assaulted, then revealed to be the most powerful person in the room. America was watching. And Brookhaven became the center of a national conversation. 2 days later, Marcus Thompson stood in front of City Hall, facing a crowd of residents, reporters, and cameras. He wore his uniform now. On his chest, the badge glinted in the sun. His face was calm. His presence was commanding. The noise quieted as he stepped to the microphone. I didn't come here to protect a broken system, he said. I came here to fix it. He paused. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I am your new chief of police. A murmur went through the crowd. Then claps. Then cheers. He continued. If you are a part of this police force and you disrespect, abuse, or look down on the citizens you swore to protect, especially because of their race, you will not last under my leadership. The applause grew louder. Marcus's voice never shook. He wasn't angry. He was resolute. I will not ignore racism. I will not excuse injustice. We don't get to say, protect and serve, and then choose who counts. We serve everyone. He looked directly into one of the cameras. I will not give in. And I will not stop. The people cheered. But more importantly, the entire police department was watching too. They knew now. Marcus Thompson wasn't just another appointment. He was the change they never thought would come. If you like this powerful story of justice and courage, hit that like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe for more meaningful tales that shake the system. A new one drops tomorrow, you don't want to miss it.